In the vast expanse of open ocean, a U.S. Navy cargo ship carrying vital supplies moved steadily through international waters. On the surface, it seemed like just another routine voyage, steel containers stacked high, engines humming with a steady rhythm, and sailors going about their duties. But beneath the calm, a storm was brewing. Shadows flickered on the horizon, tiny black dots that grew larger with every passing minute. These weren't fishing vessels, they were pirate skiffs, sleek and fast, packed with armed men who had been waiting for this exact moment. The pirates had been tracking the ship for hours, perhaps even days, waiting for the right point of isolation far from any immediate naval escort. To them, this cargo ship looked like an easy prize, slow, vulnerable, loaded with goods that could fetch millions. They revved their engines, water spraying in violent arcs behind them, and surged toward the vessel like a pack of wolves closing in on prey. On board the cargo ship, alarms blared. Lookouts spotted the incoming swarm, their radios crackling with urgent warnings. The crew knew they were in danger. The pirates weren't there to negotiate. They were there to take everything. Within minutes, more than a dozen pirate boats encircled the cargo vessel, their black flags whipping in the salty wind. Armed men shouted, waving rifles, signaling the ship to stop. But here's what the pirates didn't know. This wasn't just a cargo ship. It was part of a U.S. Navy operation, and what appeared to be a soft target was anything but defenseless. Above the ship, hidden by altitude and distance, aircraft had been silently tracking the situation. Surveillance drones had already locked onto the coordinates, feeding live data back to Navy Command. At that very moment, high above the clouds, the quiet hum of jet engines carried with it an unshakable promise. Help was already on the way. The captain of the cargo ship ordered his crew to hold steady. No panic, no sudden movements. The goal was to draw the pirates in, to make them believe they had control. Through binoculars, the pirate leader grinned, thinking victory was only moments away. He signaled his men to close the gap. The boats pressed in tighter, circling like vultures. But every second they moved closer, they unknowingly stepped into the Navy's carefully constructed kill zone. Then, the comm was shattered. Out of nowhere, the distant roar of engines grew louder. Shadows streaked across the sky, slicing through the clouds. The pirates looked up too late. U.S. Navy aircraft appeared above, their presence dominating the horizon like steel predators. In an instant, the hunters had become the hunted. The first warning strike lit up the sea just meters away from the lead skiff, sending a towering spray of water into the air. The pirates froze, confusion breaking into panic. The sky itself seemed to rain power, and the reality of their mistake was undeniable. They hadn't attacked a helpless ship, they had walked straight into the jaws of U.S. military might. And that's when the real battle began. The pirates scattered in chaos, their once confident formation breaking apart like shattered glass. Engines roared as the small skiff swerved wildly, some trying to escape, others pressing forward in blind desperation. The leader shouted orders, but the sound of jet engines above drowned his voice. A second warning shot streaked down, carving a fiery arc into the water and rocking the ocean with a violent shockwave. On the cargo ship's deck, sailors held their positions, eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. They knew the Navy's response was just beginning. Hidden defensive systems came alive, radar arrays spinning, sensors locking onto each hostile vessel. The ship wasn't just steel and cargo anymore. It was a floating fortress bristling with technology that pirates could neither see nor comprehend. Above, the Navy aircraft circled lower, their sleek silhouettes casting long shadows over the water. Each pass tightened the noose, pressing the pirates into a deadly dilemma. If they pushed forward, they would be annihilated. If they retreated, they risked being chased, captured, or destroyed before reaching safe waters. But panic makes men reckless. A cluster of pirate skiffs surged toward the cargo ship, machine guns mounted on their bows sparking to life. Tracer fire stitched the air, rattling against the steel hull with hollow clanks. The pirates were desperate to force compliance, before air power rained down in full force. That's when the ship answered back. From concealed mounts along the deck, defensive guns swiveled into place. They locked on with mechanical precision, targeting the skiffs that dared to approach. The air cracked with thunder as the ship opened fire, bursts of heavy rounds slamming into the ocean, kicking up geysers around the attackers. One pirate boat exploded into flames, debris scattering across the waves. The survivors faltered, disbelief etched across their faces. This wasn't the easy prize they had imagined. It was a trap, baited and sprung by the US Navy. Above them, the aircraft banked sharply, engines screaming, as if preparing for something far more decisive. The ocean seemed to shrink around the pirates, every escape route closing in. And then came the signal. The signal came in the form of a flare streaking down from the sky, a burning spear of light that pierced the clouds and hung above the battlefield like an omen. For the pirates, it was the first sign that their nightmare was about to escalate beyond imagination. For the crew aboard the US cargo ship, it was confirmation. The skies were theirs. Moments later, the Navy aircraft broke formation. One jet screamed downward, hugging the waves at terrifying speed, its wings glinting in the sunlight. The roar was deafening, rattling the very air and sending shockwaves across the sea. The pirates clutched their rifles, shouting in panic, but none could take aim. The jet passed low and fast, unleashing a sonic boom that shook their fragile skiffs like toys in a storm. Above, drones swooped in silently, their cameras feeding live targeting data to command stations. From the ship's bridge, officers watched every move on glowing screens. Each pirate boat tracked, catalogued, and tagged with unerring precision. Orders were given, calm and measured, while outside, chaos reigned. Another skiff tried to push through, gunners firing wildly at the cargo ship's deck. Bullets ricocheted harmlessly off reinforced armor, sparks dancing against the steel. The response was immediate. The ship's automated close-in weapons system came alive, spinning with mechanical fury. A torrent of rounds screamed across the water, cutting the skiff in half. Flames erupted, black smoke curling into the sky as wreckage sank beneath the waves. The pirates faltered again. Some boats veered away, attempting to flee, but the sea was no longer theirs. A Navy helicopter thundered into view from beyond the horizon, blades chopping the air, its silhouette menacing against the backdrop of smoke and fire. Side doors slid open, and inside, armed sailors leveled their weapons, ready to unleash precise bursts of fire at a moment's notice. Still, the pirate leader refused to back down. He stood at the bow of his skiff, waving his rifle defiantly, urging his men forward. To him, this wasn't just about plunder anymore. It was about pride, about proving he could stare down the most powerful navy in the world. But even pride has its limits when the sky turns against you. The flare above burned out, its smoke trail dissolving into the wind. And in that silence that followed, every man on the water realized the next move would decide everything. The ocean had become a chessboard, and the US Navy was about to deliver its next strike. The silence after the flare was suffocating, broken only by the thrum of helicopter blades and the restless slap of waves against steel hulls. The pirates tightened their grip on rifles and rocket launchers, eyes darting between the looming cargo ship and the dark shapes circling above. Every second stretched long, their nerves fraying under the weight of unseen power. Then the Navy moved. The helicopter shifted into position, hovering low over the water. Its floodlights snapped on, beams slicing through smoke and spray to pin the pirates in their glow. A metallic voice boomed through loudspeakers, commanding them in multiple languages to surrender immediately. But the defiant pirate leader ignored the warning, raising his weapon skyward, firing reckless bursts into the air. His men followed, the sharp crack of gunfire echoing across the sea. The Navy's response was cold and precise. A burst from the helicopter's door gun sprayed the water, just inches from the lead skiff, shredding waves into mist. The message was clear. They were one trigger pull away from annihilation. Still, some pirates pressed forward, desperation driving them past reason. The skiffs gunned their engines, charging the cargo ship's flank with reckless speed, RPGs mounted at the ready. From the deck of the ship, alarms wailed. The close-in weapon system spun with mechanical precision, locking onto the incoming threats. In an instant, a torrent of tracers lit up the sea, hammering into the charging boats. The first skiff erupted in a ball of fire, its wreckage scattering across the waves. The second swerved violently, its crew leaping overboard moments before their vessel was torn apart by another barrage. Above, the jet that had been circling high finally made its presence known again. It roared downward, slicing across the battlefield at near supersonic speed. The shock wave rolled over the water, capsizing to smaller pirate boats caught broadside by the blast. Men flailed in the churning waves, their weapons sinking beneath the surface as survival instincts overtook their mission. But still, a stubborn cluster of skiffs clung to the fight, circling, firing wildly at the Navy helicopter. Tracer rounds arced upward, futile against the armored bird that hovered like a predator. The helicopter responded in kind, gunners unleashing bursts that chewed into the water around the boats, forcing them to scatter. And yet, amid the chaos, the pirate leader's vessel remained. He stood defiantly at its bow, a dark figure against the glow of fire and smoke, his eyes fixed on the towering U.S. cargo ship. He wasn't retreating. He was waiting, perhaps for an opening, perhaps for reinforcements lurking unseen beyond the horizon. The Navy knew this wasn't over. Surveillance drones shifted their gaze outward, scanning for signs of additional vessels. The trap had been sprung, but the question remained, was this the full pirate fleet or just the first wave of something larger moving toward the kill zone? The pirate leader's skiff rocked violently as the waves rolled beneath it, but he stood his ground, gripping the railing with one hand and his weapon with the other. His men shouted nervously around him, some begging to retreat, others still firing useless bursts into the smoke-choked sky. But the leader's gaze never wavered from the cargo ship looming ahead, its silhouette lit by the fire of burning wrecks and tracer rounds streaking across the horizon. The Navy wasn't rushing the next strike. It was deliberate, controlled, letting the pirates feel the weight of inevitability pressing down on them. The silence between gunfire became heavier than the battle itself, as if the entire ocean were holding its breath. From above, the drones fed real-time images back to the command center, thermal signatures glowing in the darkness, every pirate skiff marked, every man accounted for. Suddenly, one of the drone feeds caught something. Movement far beyond the immediate clash, a faint cluster of heat signatures pushing slowly toward the combat zone. The operators sharpened the image, more boats, larger than the first wave, approaching from the east. The pirate leader's defiance now made sense. He wasn't waiting for a miracle. He was buying time. The revelation spread quickly through the Navy's chain of command. This wasn't just an opportunistic raid. It was coordinated. A second wave was inbound, and if it reached the cargo ship before the first wave was eliminated, the battle could spiral into something much bloodier. On the deck, sailors scrambled into tighter positions. Orders snapped through radios, crisp and urgent. The ship adjusted course slightly, not to flee, but to better angle its defensive systems toward the incoming threat. Above, the aircraft realigned, banking hard into new attack patterns. The Navy wasn't going to let this turn into a numbers game. The pirate leader saw it too, his face twisted into a grim smile, as if daring the Navy to hold its ground against what was coming. He raised his rifle high, signaling to the approaching reinforcements that the fight was still alive. His men roared, emboldened by the sight of their fleet on the horizon. But the U.S. Navy doesn't play by pirate rules. As the reinforcements closed in, the ocean around them began to change. A distant rumble spread through the waves, low and deep, like thunder rolling beneath the sea. The pirates didn't know it yet, but the sound meant only one thing. Another piece of the Navy's arsenal was about to enter the fight. The low rumble under the waves grew louder, vibrating through the hulls of every vessel on the battlefield. The pirate reinforcements slowed, their engines sputtering as fear rippled through the crews. They didn't understand what was happening until the water itself split open, rising like a steel leviathan. A U.S. Navy destroyer surfaced just beyond the horizon, its massive silhouette framed by smoke and fire. The ship's deck bristled with missile launchers, radar arrays, and guns that dwarfed anything the pirates had ever seen. To them, it was no longer a battle. It was an apocalypse. The destroyer's radar locked on, targeting systems painting the approaching pirate convoy. A sharp whistle split the night, followed by the roar of missiles igniting. Trails of fire carved across the sky before slamming into the approaching fleet. Explosions ripped the ocean apart, flames climbing high, shockwaves rolling through the waves like walls of water. Boats were torn to splinters, their fragments raining back down as men dove desperately into the sea. The pirate leader, still standing on the bow of his skiff, finally saw the truth. His defiance, his bravado, it meant nothing against the overwhelming force now arrayed before him. His fleet was gone, burned to wreckage in the span of minutes. His men, scattered or sinking, had lost not only the fight, but any hope of survival. The Navy helicopter swept low, its spotlight bathing him in blinding white. The voice came again over the speakers, calm but unyielding. "Surrender, now." For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, with shaking hands, he dropped his rifle into the sea. His men followed, throwing weapons overboard, some falling to their knees in surrender. The standoff that had begun with chaos ended with silence. The cargo ship continued on its course, unscathed and unyielding, its mission intact. The pirate threat broken and scattered drifted in the wake of American firepower. Above them, the sky cleared of smoke, and the drones circled one last time before turning back toward the fleet. The Navy had made its point with ruthless clarity. The oceans were not for the taking, and any who dared to challenge that truth would meet the same fate. The battle was over. The warship slipped back into the horizon, leaving nothing but flames on the water and silence in its wake.